Alex Nguyen had always dreamed of working at a cutting-edge tech startup. NeuraTech, with its sleek offices and state-of-the-art technology, was the pinnacle of that dream. As a senior software engineer, Alex took pride in his contributions to Synapse, an innovative app designed to anticipate and fulfill users' needs before they even realized them. The app had taken the tech world by storm, promising a new era of digital convenience and personalization. One late evening, Alex was at his desk, reviewing the latest code update for Synapse. The office was quiet, save for the faint hum of computers and the distant buzz of fluorescent lights. As he scrolled through lines of code, something unusual caught his eye. Buried deep within the app's architecture was a section of encrypted code he didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued, Alex began to unravel the encryption, a task that required all his technical skill and patience. Hours passed, and the office grew darker as the night progressed. Finally, he cracked the code, revealing a hidden layer of Synapse's functionality that was not documented anywhere in the project files. What he found was disturbing. This hidden code tracked users in ways that far exceeded normal data collection practices. It monitored their habits, preferences, and even their vulnerabilities with a level of detail that felt invasive. But that was only the beginning. As Alex delved deeper, he discovered that Synapse was more than just a passive observer. It was an active manipulator. The app subtly influenced users' actions through algorithmically generated suggestions, pushing them towards specific behaviors. Alex's heart pounded as he connected the dots. The app wasn't just predicting user needs, it was shaping them. It nudged users towards committing petty crimes, shoplifting, minor frauds, acts of vandalism. The suggestions were so subtle that most users would think they were acting on their own impulses. His first thought was to report his findings. He compiled his evidence into a detailed report and scheduled a meeting with his supervisor, Mark, for the next morning. As he left the office, the weight of his discovery pressed heavily on his mind. He barely slept that night, thoughts racing about the potential implications of what he had uncovered. The next day, he presented his findings to Mark, who listened with a furrowed brow. When Alex finished, Mark leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Alex, this is serious," Mark said, "but there's got to be some mistake. Maybe you misinterpreted the code. I'll look into it, but in the meantime, I need you to keep this to yourself. We don't want to cause unnecessary panic." Alex nodded, though he felt a pang of unease. Mark's dismissal felt too casual, too quick. As he walked back to his desk, a nagging doubt began to take root in his mind. He knew what he had seen, and he couldn't just let it go. Determined to uncover the truth, Alex decided to continue his investigation in secret. He spent his evenings and weekends poring over Synapse's code, documenting every suspicious line and tracing every hidden function. The more he uncovered, the more sinister the app's purpose became. Late one night, Alex accessed NeuraTech's internal servers and stumbled upon a secure server with restricted access. Using his administrative privileges, he managed to bypass the security protocols and enter the server. What he found sent a chill down his spine. The server contained detailed profiles of Synapse users, filled with personal and incriminating information. It was clear that someone was using this data for blackmail. As Alex sifted through the profiles, a horrifying realization dawned on him. The CEO of NeuraTech, Nathan Royce, was behind it all. Royce was using Synapse to manipulate and control users, amassing a treasure trove of blackmail material to further his own interests. Alex's world turned upside down. He knew he had to expose Royce, but he also knew the risks. If Royce discovered his investigation, the consequences could be dire. As he shut down his computer that night, Alex resolved to gather enough evidence to bring Royce down, no matter the cost. Determined not to let this go, Alex continued his investigation in secret. He became more meticulous, collecting screenshots, logs, and detailed documentation of the hidden code and the patterns of manipulation he had uncovered. Each night he stayed late at the office, ensuring that his work was secure and undetectable. His once casual demeanor turned wary. He avoided casual conversations, always wary of prying eyes and ears. Alex soon realized he needed help. He reached out to Julia, a trusted colleague and friend who had always shared his passion for ethical tech development. One evening, he invited her to a quiet cafe away from the prying eyes of the office, explaining everything he had discovered. Julia was initially skeptical, but as Alex presented his evidence, her skepticism turned to horror. "Alex, this is beyond anything I imagined," Julia said, her voice trembling. "We have to do something about this." "We will," Alex replied, his voice resolute. "But we need more evidence, something undeniable that we can take to the authorities." Together, they devised a plan to gather more information without arousing suspicion. Julia would continue her work as usual, subtly monitoring office communications and accessing additional data when possible. Meanwhile, Alex would use his technical skills to delve deeper into NeuraTech's secure systems. One night, while exploring the secure server again, Alex stumbled upon an encrypted folder labeled Priority Targets. His heart raced as he decrypted the folder, revealing a list of individuals who had been manipulated by Synapse. Each entry contained detailed logs of their activities, the crimes they had been coerced into committing, and the blackmail material collected on them. It was a chilling catalog of human lives systematically ruined by the app. As Alex scrolled through the entries, he noticed a pattern. The victims were strategically chosen for their influence and resources: politicians, business executives, journalists. Royce was using Synapse to build a web of control, extending his influence far beyond the tech industry. The implications were staggering. Alex realized that Royce's plan was far more extensive and sinister than he had initially thought. The following days were a blur of sleepless nights and covert operations. Alex and Julia worked tirelessly to compile their evidence, encrypting and storing it in multiple secure locations. They knew they were playing a dangerous game, but the stakes were too high to back down now. Their breakthrough came when Julia managed to access a private email correspondence between Royce and his top executives. The emails detailed plans for further expansion of Synapse's capabilities, discussing new methods of user manipulation and control. It was clear evidence of Royce's direct involvement and intent. With their evidence nearly complete, Alex and Julia planned their next move. They would present their findings to a trusted journalist, someone who could help them expose Royce's scheme to the world. They agreed to meet with Rachel Morgan, an investigative reporter known for her integrity and fearlessness. However, as they were finalizing their plans, Alex noticed something strange. His computer began acting erratically, and he received an unexpected system alert. Someone was trying to access his encrypted files. Panic set in as he realized that their investigation had been discovered. Acting quickly, Alex disconnected his computer from the network and destroyed the hard drive containing their most sensitive information. He contacted Julia, warning her to be cautious. They decided to meet at a secure location to regroup and plan their next steps. That night, Alex arrived at the designated meeting spot, a secluded park on the outskirts of the city. He waited anxiously, scanning the shadows for any signs of Julia. Minutes turned into hours, and she never showed up. His calls went unanswered, and a sense of dread settled over him. The next morning, Alex's worst fears were confirmed. As he approached the office, he saw a commotion at the entrance. Security guards were escorting Julia out of the building, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. Roy stood nearby, watching with a cold, triumphant smile. Alex knew he had to act fast. He turned on his heels and fled, blending into the crowd as he disappeared into the city. He realized that he was now alone in his fight against Royce, but he couldn't give up. He had to find another way to expose the truth and bring justice to the victims of Synapse. Alex sprinted through the crowded city streets, his heart pounding in his chest. The realization that he was now a fugitive, hunted by the very company he once admired, filled him with a mix of fear and determination. He needed to find a safe place to regroup and plan his next move. His first thought was to seek out Rachel Morgan, the journalist he and Julia had planned to contact. But he knew that reaching out to her directly would be too risky now. Royce likely had eyes and ears everywhere. As night fell, Alex found refuge in a small, run-down motel on the outskirts of the city. He paid in cash and used a fake name, hoping to stay under the radar. The room was dingy and smelled of mildew, but it provided the anonymity he needed. He pulled out his laptop, a backup he kept for emergencies, and began to reconstruct his evidence from the cloud backups he had set up. Hours passed as he painstakingly pieced together the documents, emails, and code snippets that exposed Royce's sinister scheme. To ensure his safety, Alex used a series of VPNs and encrypted messaging apps to communicate with Rachel. He crafted a carefully worded message detailing his discovery and the danger he was in. He attached a few key pieces of evidence to prove his claims and sent the message, hoping she would take the bait and meet him in person. Days went by in tense anticipation. Alex moved from one motel to another, always paying in cash and changing his appearance slightly each time. He knew Royce's reach was vast, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. His sleep was fitful, plagued by nightmares of being caught and silenced. Finally, Rachel responded. She agreed to meet him in a public place where they could talk without attracting too much attention. They chose a busy cafe in the heart of the city, hoping the crowds would provide some measure of safety. On the day of the meeting, Alex arrived early and took a seat in a corner, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. When Rachel walked in, he felt a glimmer of hope. She was a tall, confident woman with a no-nonsense demeanor. She spotted Alex and made her way to his table, sitting down with a wary glance around the room. "You're Alex, right?" she asked, her voice low and cautious. Alex nodded, leaning in to speak quietly. "Yes. Thank you for meeting me. I don't have much time, so I'll get straight to the point." He handed her a USB drive containing the reconstructed evidence. Rachel plugged it into her laptop and began reviewing the files. As she read through the documents and watched the videos, her expression shifted from skepticism to shock. "This is unbelievable," she whispered, her eyes wide. "If this is true, Royce is running one of the most insidious operations I've ever seen, but we'll need more than this to take him down." "I know," Alex replied. "That's why I need your help. Julia, my colleague, was caught, and I don't know what happened to her. I can't do this alone." Rachel nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll do everything I can to help you, but we need to be careful. Royce has a lot of power and resources. We have to stay one step ahead." They spent the next few hours strategizing their next moves. Rachel would use her contacts to start a quiet investigation, gathering additional evidence and corroborating Alex's findings. Alex, meanwhile, would continue to dig deeper into NeuraTech's systems, finding more concrete proof of Royce's involvement and the app's manipulation. As they parted ways, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but he was determined to see it through. For Julia, for the victims of Synapse, and for the countless others who could be affected if Royce's scheme continued unchecked. Returning to his temporary hideout, Alex set up a more secure workspace, using every precaution he could think of to avoid detection. He hacked into NeuraTech's internal communications, hoping to find any leads on Julia's whereabouts and more evidence of the company's malfeasance. Days turned into weeks as he continued his covert operation, always looking over his shoulder, always wary of being discovered. One evening, while sifting through encrypted emails, Alex found a message thread that sent a chill down his spine. It was a conversation between Royce and his top security officer, discussing the Nguyen situation. They were closing in on him, using advanced tracking techniques and leveraging their extensive network to locate him. He knew his time was running out. With Rachel's investigation gaining traction, the pressure was mounting on both sides. He had to act fast, find a way to expose Royce publicly before it was too late. As he prepared for what he hoped would be his final move, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a razor's edge. The stakes had never been higher, and one wrong step could mean the end, not just for him, but for everyone he was trying to protect. As Alex prepared for his final move, the weight of his mission bore down on him heavily. He knew that if he failed, the consequences would be dire, not just for him, but for countless others who could fall victim to Royce's machinations. The evidence he had compiled, combined with Rachel's investigative prowess, could bring down NeuraTech and expose Royce's evil scheme to the world. In a last-ditch effort, Alex decided to go straight to the source. Royce's mansion. He needed something irrefutable, something that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind about Royce's guilt. Using his hacking skills, Alex managed to gain access to NeuraTech's internal network, locating Royce's private server hidden deep within his mansion. It contained personal emails, confidential documents, and detailed plans that laid bare the full extent of his manipulation and control tactics. Alex knew this would be his most dangerous mission yet. Royce's mansion was heavily guarded, with advanced security systems and private security personnel patrolling the premises. Any misstep could result in capture or worse. Undeterred, Alex prepared meticulously, gathering the necessary tools and planning his infiltration down to the last detail. On the night of the operation, Alex dressed in dark, inconspicuous clothing and made his way to the mansion under the cover of darkness. He parked his car a safe distance away and approached on foot, using the dense foliage surrounding the property as cover. His heart raced as he bypassed the perimeter security, using his technical expertise to disable the cameras and sensors temporarily. Once inside the grounds, Alex moved swiftly and silently, avoiding the patrolling guards and slipping into the mansion through a side entrance. The interior was opulent, a stark contrast to the sinister activities being orchestrated within its walls. Alex made his way to Royce's private office, guided by the schematics he had memorized. The office door was locked, but Alex had come prepared. He used a small electronic device to bypass the security system and unlock the door. Inside, he found Royce's computer, a high-end machine with multiple layers of encryption and security. Alex sat down at the desk, connected his laptop, and began the arduous task of breaking into the system. Time seemed to stretch on interminably as Alex worked, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He knew he didn't have long before someone noticed the security breaches. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he gained access to the private server. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the files, each one more damning than the last. He quickly began downloading the most incriminating evidence: emails detailing blackmail schemes, records of manipulated users committing crimes, and even video recordings of Royce discussing his plans with his top executives. The enormity of what he was uncovering was staggering. This was the smoking gun he needed. Just as the download neared completion, Alex heard the sound of footsteps approaching. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized he had been discovered. He quickly grabbed a USB drive, loaded it with the critical files, and slipped it into his pocket. There was no time to finish the download or cover his tracks. The door burst open, and 2 security guards rushed in, guns drawn. "Hands up! Step away from the computer!" one of them barked. Alex complied, raising his hands slowly. He knew he couldn't fight his way out of this. The guards approached cautiously, one of them grabbing him roughly and securing his hands behind his back with zip ties. They led him out of the office and down the corridor, where Royce stood waiting, a smug smile on his face. "Alex Nguyen," Royce said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I must admit, I'm impressed. But did you really think you could outsmart me in my own home?" Alex glared at him, but said nothing. His mind raced, trying to think of a way out of this. Royce signaled the guards to take him away, and they dragged him down to the mansion's basement. It was a cold, sterile space with a single chair in the center of the room. They forced Alex into the chair, securing him with heavy straps. Royce stepped forward, holding the USB drive Alex had tried to steal. "You thought this would bring me down," he sneered, waving the drive in front of Alex's face. "You're naive, Alex. Power like mine doesn't crumble because of a few stolen files." As Royce turned to leave, Alex managed to speak through gritted teeth. "This isn't over, Royce. People will know the truth." Royce chuckled darkly. "Oh, I don't think so. By the time anyone finds out, you'll be long gone, just another casualty of your own reckless ambition." The guards left Alex alone in the basement, the heavy door slamming shut behind them. Alex struggled against his restraints, but it was no use. He was trapped, and Royce's words echoed in his mind, a grim reminder of the stakes he was up against. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Alex clung to a glimmer of hope. He knew Rachel was out there, continuing the fight. If he could just survive long enough, maybe, just maybe, the truth would come to light. Alex sat in the cold, dark basement of Royce's mansion, his mind racing despite the hopelessness of his situation. The straps dug into his wrists and ankles, leaving red marks on his skin. Every muscle in his body ached, but he refused to give up. He had come too far to let Royce win without a fight. Hours turned into days, and Alex's body grew weaker. The guards brought him meager rations and water, just enough to keep him alive. Royce occasionally visited, taunting him with stories of his continued success and the futility of Alex's efforts. But Alex remained resolute, his mind focused on the evidence he had managed to download and the hope that Rachel would continue the fight. One evening, as the mansion was enveloped in silence, Alex heard a faint noise from the corridor. The door creaked open, and a shadowy figure slipped into the room. It was Rachel, her face determined and tense. "Alex!" she whispered urgently, rushing to his side. "We don't have much time." "Rachel, how did you—" Alex's voice was hoarse from lack of use. "There's no time to explain. We need to get you out of here." She produced a small toolkit and quickly worked on the restraints, freeing Alex from the chair. Once free, Alex stood on shaky legs, leaning on Rachel for support. "The evidence," he said weakly, pointing to a nearby table where Royce had carelessly left the USB drive. Rachel grabbed it and stuffed it into her bag. "We have everything we need," she said. "Let's go." Rachel led Alex through the dimly lit corridors, avoiding the guards who patrolled the mansion. They reached a side exit where a car was waiting. Alex collapsed into the passenger seat, breathing heavily. Rachel got behind the wheel and sped away from the mansion, the tires screeching as they hit the open road. "How did you find me?" Alex asked, his voice filled with gratitude and curiosity. "I had a feeling Royce would bring you here. I've been monitoring the mansion, looking for any sign of you. When I saw a change in the guard patterns, I knew you were here," Rachel explained, her eyes focused on the road. They drove in silence for a while, the tension slowly easing from Alex's body. He felt a glimmer of hope returning. They headed to a safe house, a small cabin in the woods, far from the prying eyes of Royce's network. Inside the cabin, Alex rested while Rachel worked tirelessly to compile and verify the evidence. She contacted her trusted sources, journalists, and law enforcement, ensuring the story would break widely and credibly. As the days passed, Alex's strength returned, and he began to assist Rachel in preparing the final report. The day of reckoning arrived. Rachel had arranged for a press conference where she would reveal the full extent of NeuraTech's operations and Royce's crimes. Alex watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding as Rachel stood before the cameras, the evidence displayed prominently on a large screen behind her. "Today, we expose the truth behind NeuraTech and its CEO, Robert Royce," Rachel began, her voice steady and confident. "For years, this company has manipulated its users, driving them to commit crimes and using the data to blackmail individuals. The evidence we present today is irrefutable." She detailed the operation, showing emails, videos, and financial records. The room was filled with gasps and murmurs as the shocking truth came to light. Royce's carefully constructed facade crumbled before the world's eyes. Meanwhile, Royce watched the press conference from his office, his face growing pale as he realized the gravity of his situation. He frantically called his lawyers and attempted to bribe officials, but it was too late. Law enforcement had already issued warrants for his arrest. Back at the cabin, Alex and Rachel watched the news coverage, relief washing over them. The victory was bittersweet. Alex knew that many lives had been destroyed by Royce's greed and cruelty, including his own. But he also knew that their efforts had made a difference. Justice, though delayed, was finally being served. As the days turned into weeks, Royce was arrested and charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. NeuraTech's assets were seized, and the company was dismantled. The app, Synapse, was taken offline, and its victims were offered counseling and support. Alex and Rachel continued their work, now as partners, dedicated to uncovering corruption and exposing the truth. The ordeal had changed them both, forging a bond that would last a lifetime. Though haunted by the past, they found solace in the knowledge that they had brought a powerful man to justice and prevented further harm. In the end, Alex knew he had done the right thing. He had faced his fears, stood up against a formidable enemy, and, with Rachel's help, emerged victorious. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope and purpose.